An election denier joins the Republican ticket for governor and lieutenant governor.
It's somewhat of a head scratcher, no doubt about it.
We talked to Denver's mayor about accountability after 5 people are hurt when police open fire downtown. A group that wants to see more wolves in our state doesn't like the government's plan, so they've come up with one of their own.
It's time to restore native wolves to Colorado.
The lives lost near the Cameron Peak fire burn scar remind us there will be years of danger up there. And the final chapter of a story that started on a ski lift and ended up in a long distance lost and found. Next. Heidi Ganahl's Republican campaign for governor is looking to make history with her running mate selection today. Denier would be the 3rd black lieutenant governor in Colorado, but he would be the first ever election denier to hold that position. If you've heard of Moore, it's probably for the time that he was recently removed as head of the state's redistricting committee for pushing election rigging conspiracy theories. Ganahl falsely claimed today that Moore is not an election denier, but politics guy Marshall Zellinger still has the receipts.
Denier is the running mate for Republican gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahl. He was not her first pick. On conservative talk radio on July 1st, she said her pick was a strong Hispanic leader from rural Colorado. Moore is African American and from Centennial.
It's somewhat of a head scratcher, no doubt about it.
We asked conservative pollster David Flaherty not so much about a running mate who was not the first choice, but a running mate who lost a leadership position because of social media posts questioning the 2020 election.
In Colorado, that question is relatively important to voters. It's going to extend that those questions are around Heidi Ganahl, whether she believes the election was stolen or not.
Moore served on the committee that redrew the boundaries for the state's 8 congressional districts. He was stripped as chair of that committee after our reporting on his social media posts, calling the 2020 election the most questioned election in our country's history, saying mail-in ballots can be controlled by the people you give them to.
Danny is not an election denier.
Ganahl spoke about her pick this afternoon on 850 KOA.
And as a citizen was asking questions and made a post on Facebook that caused some drama when he was on the redistricting commission.
It was not just one Facebook post. In one reply, he wrote, "No one believes that 80 million people voted for Joe Biden." In another post, he said the president was elected by the Democrat steal. And another post about election fraud.
Every campaign is going to have some unforced errors at some point.
9 News Republican analyst Kelly Maher points out it's July and the announcement of a running mate, not something issue-related when more voters are paying attention after Labor Day.
I think that this lieutenant governor's pick will probably not have as much of an effect as it feels like it has right now today.
There was an Hispanic from rural Colorado, Felix Lopez, who I spoke with a week and a half ago, who was rumored to be the pick. He told me he was not sure how that information got out prematurely and conversations were still going on. And on KOA radio today, when asked about this other pick, Heidi Ganahl said they had to make a change because of family issues.
Kelly Maher references an unforced error. Lieutenant governor pick's supposed to be a layup. I mean, you get to pick the person, you get to vet the person. The only thing that you can't do is like announce it's the one guy and then say, whoops, oh, nope, that guy's gone. Now we got a new guy. And it seems like it's just like drip, drip, drip.
When you have multiple things on top of each other, we have this, we have the pick that isn't what you said it was going to be in the first place. The thing last week about Democrats for Ganahl with a prominent far-right Republican holding a sign that they talked their way out of by saying, oh, she was just there to support the Democrats. She's not a Democrat. And if you want to go back to the watch party, sharing a watch party with Tina Peters, which brings us back to this and the topic of election fraud, which she wanted to avoid since she announced last September.
And for everybody who's like center right or right in Colorado that wants a competitive governor's race, what could end up being the end result here is that national money that could come in and make this competitive, those people may watch the Ganahl campaign at this point and decide that they would rather just light their money on fire in a trash barrel.
There's a bigger trickle-down effect also with the state Senate possibly up for grabs. If the Republicans win at least 2, perhaps 3 seats, they could take control of the state Senate. If you don't have quite what you're expecting on the top of the ticket, it could roll down.
All right, Marshall, thank you. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock talked public safety and violence in his State of the City address today. One day after 5 people were injured when Denver police shot at an armed suspect downtown. There was a word in that speech that caught the attention of our own Jeremy Hohola: accountability. Jeremy discussed that with the mayor and the police chief.
Less than 48 hours before Mayor Hancock's State of the City speech, another shooting in downtown Denver. This time, officers fired at a suspect with a gun, potentially injuring 5 bystanders who were hit with either police bullets or shrapnel. The mayor touched upon public safety in his speech.
Public safety today and tomorrow is about better policing, expertly prepared, well-trained, and accountable law enforcement.
After his speech, I asked Hancock about accountability.
What are you doing as mayor to make sure the right people in this case are going to be held accountable?
Well, we're going to let the investigation go first, and I think that's the first responsibility of the leader of the city, director of safety, and the chief of police. These officers were there on the street to keep everyone safe. They were not out there to injure anyone intentionally, and so we'll allow for the investigation. I think that's the first thing I need to do as a leader, is to wait for the investigations to be completed.
Outside the venue, Chief Paul Pazin addressed the press, but said he couldn't say much because of the active investigation.
You're the chief of police. What are you going to do to make sure the right people are held accountable in this case?
There's multiple levels of review, to include the Office of the District Attorney's Office, who was on scene and responded, involved in the entire investigation. They play a very critical role here. I also would like to point out that the Office of Independent Monitor was able to be involved right from the get-go on this.
Like the mayor in his speech, the chief brought up violent offenders with guns.
We talked about accountability a little bit earlier. We talked about ensuring that officers are held accountable for their actions. We certainly need to ensure that violent and repeat offenders are held accountable for their actions as well.
For Next, I'm Jeremy Hohola.
Denver police say they expect to release more information on what happened on Wednesday. They did confirm today that the officers involved were wearing body cameras. Those cameras were turned on. This is the second time this summer that a Denver police officer has fired a gun in a crowded area downtown. Last month, an off-duty officer fired at a drive-by shooting suspect near 15th and Larimer. No one was hurt in that incident. Homelessness has clearly been one of the biggest issues that Denver Mayor Hancock has faced in his 11 years in office. Enforcing the homeless camping ban has led to lawsuits and protests, and the homeless encampments just get swept block to block. During his final State of the City address today, the mayor discussed his handling of the issue.
Homelessness is a complex issue, the most complex public policy issue I have faced as an elected official.
The mayor said today the city is spending $240 million a year to fight homelessness. Some of the money is going to affordable housing, temporary housing, and the mayor wants $2 million for what's being called the Basic Income Project, a pilot program where, with the approval of City Council, if that comes, the city would give $1,000 each month to women and families experiencing homelessness. The mayor talked today about what he called an unjust humanitarian crisis. He said he believes that he's had success in helping the homeless. Homeless advocates do not share that view.
He's actually done some really good things here in the city, but when it comes to housing and homelessness, he's been very, very bad for homelessness. When the camping ban was first introduced into the city, it was obvious that he had no idea what was going on out on the streets and how to do that. And he got a lot of bad advice, and he stuck with it, and it's been pretty draconian.
There's Benjamin Dunning with Denver Homeless Out Loud, who said that he believes the way the city just pushes people from one street corner to another in an endless loop is immoral. May I make a recommendation? I want to point you towards something that did not come from us, but I think is worth your time. As former Trump campaign manager Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress trial starts, I'm reminded of the long-form Washington Post profile on how there's an obscure Colorado-based news network that's giving Bannon his largest platform these days. Real America's Voice is based in Centennial and owned by Robert Sigg, convicted felon. The show gives Bannon, seen here interviewing Republican gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahl, an audience for his false election rigging claims and claims about vaccines and so forth. The Post piece examines how Real America's Voice aims to be more pro-Trump than Fox News Channel or Newsmax, and they've built this brand around Bannon. There's a link to the Post article about this Colorado-based news network on the next Facebook page. The wolves are coming. Well, there's a couple of them already here, and as Colorado Parks and Wildlife puts together its formal wolf reintroduction plan, there's an advocacy group that says CPW's been too secret about this process, so they're putting out their own plan. Back in November 2020, statewide vote approved a plan to reintroduce gray wolves. We've told you how basically urban voters outnumbered rural voters and decided to stick wolves in rural areas. Since then, CPW has been listening to ranchers and hunters and wildlife conservationists. The group Wild Earth Guardians says it feels that the conversation has shifted too far in terms of limiting wolf populations, when and how wolves can be killed, how to compensate livestock owners. Wild Earth Guardians want CPW to focus more on helping a small wolf population thrive. This proposal from Wild Earth Guardians would set up 12 zones they say are habitable for wolves.
We also want to see them across the state in various zones, not sort of in a few pockets, and that calling that recovery, because that won't build a self-sustaining population over the long term. It will have a number of wolves in various areas, and we won't see those ecological benefits that we really know that wolves can bring to a landscape.
The group says they eventually want to have 150 packs of wolves, or about 750 total wolves, scattered around the state. They say CPW is considering 150 wolves total. Wild Earth Guardians submitted its plan today. They'll present it to the state's commissioners in Edwards on Thursday. Hey, real quick, I want to thank you for what you did for young adults diagnosed with cancer in Colorado. You all have raised $25,000 in the last couple of days for the Dear Jack Foundation, based in Littleton. So they kind of pick up at age 19, where Make-A-Wish leaves off, and the wishes that young adults fighting cancer have are often quite different than younger people. Often they're looking for help starting a business, or finishing their education, or getting ready to have a family after cancer. That is directly what your donations are going to go towards. Your Word of Thanks weekly microgiving campaigns have raised $9.2 million since 2020. We're always looking for small to mid-sized nonprofits in our state that could use our help, and fast. Email any ideas to me at next@9news.com, and I'll be back with our next chance to help on Wednesday.
Some nasty business left over from Colorado's mining days sits near homes. The state has a plan to clean it up. It'll take time. We told you about the ski slope detective helping reunite people with what they lost on the lifts.
I've had people pay me like $3 for their phone.
Now he's getting a bigger reward. And in the ongoing war between rocks and cars, chalk up another win for the rocks. Next.
The kind of flash flooding that led to 2 deaths Friday in Larimer County is likely to happen again. The threat of flooding and mudslides from the Cameron Peak and the East Troublesome burn scars are likely to last 5 years or more. Friday was the second time that we've seen deadly flash flooding in that area over the past 2 years. The Forest Service says that first responders will try to warn people if there's an imminent risk. As we reported on Friday, Larimer County is also sending out alerts. They worry that if they're sending too many alerts for potential danger as opposed to imminent danger, then people will tune them out. The Forest Service says ultimately it's up to people to know the dangers and the risks in areas where they go, knowing that even urgent alerts may not reach people if they don't have cell service.
A lot of folks are going out into nature to get away from it all and to not hear their cell phone buzzing. And so, it's kind of a catch-22 about, do you want that, or do you really just want to be able to get away? So really planning ahead as much as possible is really the key. And knowing that you can't necessarily rely on that cell phone.
And it doesn't take very much to trigger these flash floods. As little as 1/3 of an inch of rain can cause major flooding if it comes down quickly, like in 15 minutes or less.
Today was all about the heat. We shattered our record high today. 99, that was the old one. 100 degrees now going down in the record books here in Denver. Triple-digit temperatures across much of eastern Colorado. Fort Collins, Greeley, too, and then lining up the eastern plains into Nebraska, Kansas, even up in the mountains. 89 in Steamboat, 101 in Grand Junction with some mid-90s around Durango. We still have a couple more hours to go with this heat advisory in place for the metro area along I-76 and I-70 out there toward Lyman because of this dangerous heat. As we look on the radar, yes, we do have a couple of thunderstorms out there. Again, everything kind of fizzling out once it hits the plains. If anything, gusty winds, a little bit of lightning, and some light rain showers. Everything scooting out overnight. Tomorrow morning, the sunshine is back, but here we go again. 2, 3 o'clock, the thunderstorms will be dropping around the metro area. Again, nothing really severe. The heat, once again on. Slightly cooler than today. Hey, we'll take whatever we can get, right? But still in the mid to upper 90s around the metro. 70s up in the high country. We'll keep the isolated afternoon thunderstorms in the forecast. And right now, I have another 100-degree day on the books next Friday.
Guy in Florida is grateful that a worker at Keystone found his lost phone, and now he is free of a guilty conscience. Rocks So big, yet so stealthy. I don't know how this became your favorite thing on Next, but oops, a rock did it again. Next.
That's one of my favorite videos yet. State's about to launch a new effort trying to clean up some hazardous waste piles left over from way back in historic mining days. The State Department of Health and the EPA are going to focus on the Clear Creek Superfund site. It's pretty large. It's 400 square miles in the Clear Creek watershed, so it includes the Central City and Black Hawk, Idaho Springs, Empire, Georgetown. The work is going to target mine waste piles that are harmful to humans, lead, arsenic that can increase cancer risk. This is not a quick process over that amount of territory. Investigation will start the fall, could last until 2025. That's when the remediation cleanup begin. The EPA may be cleaning up a few piles along the way if they're right next to homes. The state's also recommending that families in that area get a blood lead test. They're working to set up a free testing program with Clear Creek County Public Health. I want to update you on one of our favorite stories from last week. So many of you wrote in about this. On Wednesday, we told you about Miles Vale. His hobby is finding lost treasures under the ski lifts after the snow melts at Keystone. He's found 11 dropped iPhones this year. Through some amateur sleuthing, he's returned 9 of those phones to their owners, including the phone that belonged to this guy, Andrew Knoll from Boca Raton, Florida. So Andrew had phone insurance. So when he lost his phone, he paid $200 for a new one. And then when he got his found phone back in the mail, he traded that in for $400. So he made out well, even though he lost his phone.
He actually basically gave me $200. His hard work awarded me $200. So I split that in half with him and covered the cost of shipping, you know, which is still selfish of me. I should have gave him the whole damn $200.
So that's what Andrew said on our air. And afterwards, he decided to follow his conscience. And he sent Miles the rest of the money for, quote, being a special person. Either way, it's a far better reward than the guy who got his lost iPhone back and gave Miles a whopping $3. Cars versus rocks. Rocks are undefeated. We have seen it year after year. New one next. You know what's coming every time we cue up this classic. The Target Rock years ago set the standard for aggressive rocks, the kind that jump out in front of cars. Target Rock was originally at Colorado Mills Mall before it had to be moved for everyone's safety. Well, we got another rock out there car hunting. What are you doing? This is Carter Lake and Loveland. What are you doing as a driver to end up in this situation? Probably doing something other than driving. I also want to know what the first words out of somebody's mouth are. I'm sorry, those are right in the middle of nowhere. Like, how do you? Okay. All right, they needed a tow truck for this job. Patricia Casey shared that photo from Carter Lake. Bad summer for the cars. Might remember last week we had another one. This is the Walgreens rock sneaking up on cars in the Walgreens parking lot off of 44th and Wadsworth. They are stealthy and they will leap right out in front of you. So don't end up like the driver of that very nice Audi there just dangling in the breeze. If you see rocks targeting our vehicles, send us the photos. We will share them as a public service and a warning to others. Use the hashtag HeyNext or email next@9news.com. Lou Thomas writes in about the Republican gubernatorial candidate Heidi Ganahl picking Danny Moore as her running mate. Says, that's a bad pick. Saying that, how important is it? Who is the current lieutenant governor? I could Google it, but I don't care. Since nobody cares but politicians and journalists, and nobody trusts either of us. It's a pretty good point, Lou. See you next time.